Hello everyone, Nicole Steckline, Technical Agronomist for DeKalb and Asgrow in Eastern Iowa. And 2020 is, well, it's 2020. It's the year that just won't stop giving. Heck, even things that we thought that were going well, like having a dry planting season and being able to get our crop in a timely fashion, even that had some strings attached to it. And what I'm referring to is corn rootworm. When we have a dry spring, we tend to have better corn rootworm hatch survival, and therefore our numbers are even higher this year. We just came off of a 2 to 3 year span where we saw our western corn rootworm populations increasing, as well as in many cases our northern corn rootworm populations increasing as well. Now, we had a lot of wins. I tend to be an optimist, and I like to try and find the silver linings in some scenarios. And if there is a silver lining to all of the down corn that I've been walking, it's gotta be that it's uncovering some areas of high rootworm pressure and damage that in the fall we may have just chalked up to stalk rots or just not a very good hybrid. So I want to take you through how to evaluate a set of corn roots, how to score them, and what those scores actually mean to you to determine that. Not only that, but economic threshold when it comes to corn roots really is more determined on the injury that they are causing to the corn plant. So we score this on what's called the node injury score, which is a scale from 0 to 3. It's like golf, where 3 is bad, 0 is no injury. So what we're going to do is we will be scoring the first 3 nodes of roots. And the first one that we score, those set of roots, need to be in the soil. It's not really fair if we're scoring a node of roots that's not in the soil. So that's the first one that we're going to score. The way you do it is, so we're going to look at this root, and on this one, this first set of nodes was in the soil, so we will count this one, and we are going to look at the percent of this node that has roots that are fed to within 1.5 inches of the stalk. So here we're fine. We've got one root here that's been fed to that level. So I'm going to pull it back. The rest of these here appear to be fine. And here's one more. So we had a very low level of feeding on this node of roots here. We're going to say that this is about 10%. So this first node, we're going to get a score of 0.1. So I'm going to move the rest of these roots back just so I can have better visual, get in and see that next node of roots a little bit better. Move those out of the way. Remember, we've got a score so far of a 0.1 on this set of roots. So now we're going to go around and score this next node of roots. So here we've got one root there that's fed to within 1.5 inches. This one has a lot of feeding on it, but we aren't going to count it because it's not fed to that level. Here we've got another one right there. We've got a lot more feeding, and you can see this regrowth here. There was a lot of feeding right there, but then we got some regrowth. So we've got another one right there and another one right here. So of all the roots on that node, we're looking at probably about another 30%. So that 0.1 or that 10% from the first node plus that 0.3, 0.4 from this node, we're looking at about a 0.4 to a 0.5. To look at this next node of roots, I don't see any others that are going to be fed to within that 1.5 inches of the stem. So this one is going to get a root rating of 0.4 to 0.5. This next root that I have here, we are going to be counting this first set of roots here because these were in the soil about 2 inches. So we're going to go around and score the first round here. So we've got 2 that are fed, 3, 4 of these roots, 5, 6. So those 6 roots, when I look percentage wise, those 6 account for about 40% of this first node of roots. So right now we're at a 0.4 for this root. So I'm just going to move back all of these roots so I have better visual of that next node. And this next node here is an absolute disaster. It's really hard to see on camera, but we can see these roots here have been fed on very greatly, and every single one of the roots on this node are fed to within 1.5 inches of the stalk. So we've got 0.4 on this set, and then we have 1 because we've got an entire node gone. That's an entire 1. So right now we've got a total score for this root of 1.4. If we look at this next one, there's none with that feeding level. So it's quite common to see most of the damage occurring on a single node of roots. And that's because soil pests, insects, they will go after the growing tissue because they sense the carbon dioxide that's being put off by these growing roots, and they go to attack. So depending on planting date and rootworm feeding timing, they will be going after. The majority of the feeding is going to happen on that set of roots that's doing most of the growing at the time of feeding. Now, the longer hatch and the longer feeding period you have, the more different nodes are going to get fed on, but the majority of it is going to happen on a single node.